Great. Yeah, today I want to talk about growth product managers and what product managers do differently, and probably like what do they focus on. Just like to answer all the questions at the later part of it. I'll take about like 45 minutes to cover certain important topics that I feel like will be valuable and for good takeaways, and then we can have the question and answer session. About a little quick note about me: being in the industry for the last 14 years. Started with Verizon, and then moved work with Cisco, and like from software engineer to product manager role. And then I moved into and then went to did my MBA at Northwestern Kellogg, and also a dual degree in engineering design, master's in engineering design. Then I went on to work with startups. The first startup that I worked was called Pinsight Media, which was acquired by SoftBank. I was a product lead there, and then I worked with a company called Bungle, which was recently acquired for $800 million. I was a product lead there as well, which was funded by Google Ventures, which is focused on video advertising. Very passionate about building great products. I knew how to build products when I was a software engineer. And then the why am I building certain features, how to prioritize, what are the right ways to understand user pain points, how do you prioritize? And that led me into this journey of product for the last 7 or 8 years. And then I went into Facebook for 3+ years, where I led product and growth. Started with the Messenger core team, led to the team where we reached the 1 billion user milestone. And then I moved into the people to business messenger platform, which was called the chatbot platform. And then I worked in that, and then also covered WhatsApp and Instagram direct. And finally, like the last 1 year, I've been focusing more on a broader set of startups. I've been currently a vice president of product at a growing early stage company called GRIN. And other than that, I'm also advising like 8 companies right now, which are all in different stages as a product advisor or a growth advisor. The reason I actually wanted to share a lot of what is upcoming in the industry right now. It's an area, it's a principle, it's a strategy that has been talked about a lot of late. Which I learned a lot during my time at Facebook three years ago, and now it's been these principles are applied across the board. Is what we call as product-led growth. I want to talk about a little bit of that and why is it growing? What is the need for that, and how is the trend coming across? And yeah, like I just want to also talk about 5 things that growth product managers focus on or do differently than general product managers, and some key takeaways for you guys. First one, like broadly, what is product-led growth? Product-led growth is a business strategy where the usage of the product itself is the primary driver of user acquisition, retention, and conversion. Where people are not don't want to spend thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in user acquisition and CAC cost. So they actually have intelligently developed a system. This actually evolved very, very much from companies like Facebook, where we don't usually spend a lot of money on marketing and acquiring new users. There is a whole principle over which we build the products in such a way that the product itself becomes a big growth lever on user acquisition. I'll go through several points. I've covered it in the next few slides, but I'll also go through why this is becoming important. One of the main reasons this is becoming important, not only in the world of consumer side, which has been taken over, which has been used for the last few years by companies like Uber, Facebook, Airbnb, and the likes. But there's also a whole set of SaaS companies now applying the same set of principles, like HubSpot, like Atlassian. All these companies are also applying product-led growth principles. And I've been seeing a lot of success in the SaaS space as well. And that's caused a lot of momentum on product-led growth. Just wanted to go in depth about why is this important, and what do these growth product managers do? How do they champion product-led growth? One of the first principles of product-led growth is build products that users love. That may be a cliche, but there's a subtle difference, and the very important difference is product growth managers or growth product managers focus a lot on product market fit, which means identifying a lot about what are the key pain points, how do you solve it, not just solve it, but exceed and satisfy the user. The other area that I wanted to talk about where growth product managers focus on is how do you build virality and stickiness inside the product design. The third aspect, which is also very important, is how do you take product decisions in your go-to-market strategy? How do you develop product and monetization growth as a growth lever? The other area that a lot of companies have started to think about and start building on is how do you leverage growth channels like platform integrations, partnerships, API integrations, and things like that. And finally, how does this all change the role of a growth product manager who is very much a product manager who's like day-to-day working with the engineers and designers to also start thinking about outbound teams more and more, and how do they align with the common growth metrics. So that's kind of like what I want to do. I want to actually touch a lot about the product-led growth principles along with talking about how growth product managers think. The first part, as I said, is like, how do you build products that users love, right? This is the core of every product manager. The main area of difference, or I wouldn't call it difference, the main area that growth product managers do focus on is product market fit. Is to not just focus on the initial MVPs, but also like focus on whether the product has achieved the fit. If not, have a continuously engaging experimentation on the product, introducing new features, and constantly trying to understand whether users really love the product. One of the core aspects of doing it, we call it like the 4 levers to think about product market fit, which is like inevitability, the retention, the authenticity of the product, and the referral, which means actually, is this product inevitable? Is the value that you're providing out of the product, is that inevitable or not, right? End of the day, consumers are coming to your product. If you remove the product, if you actually shut down the service today, will they be affected or not? Will they be actually coming back to you and asking for it? Is it actually it has become an inevitable part of their actual value that they gain out of your product? The second part of it is retention. Is like, are users coming back again and again to use your product without you reaching out back to them and getting them back into your service? The third part of it is, we call it like authenticity, whether the product stays true to its expectation. A lot of products start in a certain place and then they completely move, try to solve different things and move away from their core principles. And identifying what that core principle is, what is the core jobs to be done aspect that the product is solving, and staying true to that expectation is a very important part of product market fit. The final thing is, how many organic referrals are the users giving you? Like, not just like referrals that you create or like incentivize, but how do people talk about you in the market? Like, how do they share information about you? It's a very important metric. So most of this is usually collected over a survey. There's a product market fit survey that we send out to users. It's very applicable for the B2B space or enterprise space. On the consumer space, we actually look at a lot of indirect signals to assess the same thing. We look at like reviews, ratings. We look at like how people engage, how people come back and retain. So we look at a lot of things, and especially in products like Messenger, where we constantly look at this and how people are using it. Are they trying to go out and start using other products, and how does it affect their day engagement and retention? The other thing that we actually look at a lot when we look at product market fit is, how do you excel and delight users? It's not about just satisfying their jobs to be done and leaving it there. It's about actually delighting users and identifying those aha moments. There's also like a big revolution that's changing and happening right now in the enterprise space. A lot of consumers are used to amazing consumer products like Airbnb or Facebook or Uber. And now they're expecting the same in the enterprise space. Now they're bringing their own device. They're also expecting amazing user experiences. So the actual status of how the B2B SaaS products are being built are also completely being changed right now. Where it used to be how the CEO designs or decides what products they want to buy, to who the buyers or let's say if it's a CMO or a particular authority who actually makes the decisions, to actually now the end user have started to decide the growth of B2B SaaS products, which is a great thing, because now you will have amazing enterprise products, let's say like HubSpot, like Atlassian, where the end user, or Slack, where the end user have started to promote these products because of how well the product is being designed and how well it solves their problem. The other most important thing is the adoption and onboarding experience that we focus a lot when we think about amazing products. It's like, how does the onboarding experience happen? How does the user come in first? A lot of users like to have that self-start experience. They go in a product, it's self-intuitive, where they were able to learn things and move across seamlessly. And when they get stuck, and how do you offer either a customer success or like a help support much easily and an interactive way? And that's another area that a lot of companies are focusing on when they build amazing products: interactive, getting feedback really quick, and incorporating back into the product. And the other aspect of building great products is experimentation. We do this a lot at Facebook, like amazing level of experimentation. We do every small feature, every small color, everything that we actually put it out there, verify it. We have a set audience, let's say 5% of the audience, we expose it to see how people use a certain product, how they adopt to a certain feature. We keep a lot of KPIs over which we track these experiments, and then we come to a go and no go. And that's a very, that's one of the reasons why products move from an initial MVP stage into a place of product market fit, a lot of iterations and continuous experimentation. The other thing about product-led growth is about building virality and stickiness into the product design. It's kind of like a core tenet of how do you think about growth as you're designing the core product. When I say virality, like people think it just happens, but it doesn't happen just like that. Virality and stickiness, there's a whole lot of formulas and models that we put together along with the marketing team and the design team, and start evaluating how changing a certain feature, how adding a certain aspect increases or decreases the stickiness and virality. Give you some good examples on that. As you have seen this as becoming more and more common these days, is like the referral system, right? Like whether it's Uber, Airbnb, or Postmates, or Dropbox, or Postmates, or any of these systems have a very like deeply ingrained referral systems where they incentivize users to actually reach out to the others or friends, and then actually recommend them on their services. There's also like invite-based virality, in which, let's say you are using a Dropbox system, the value of the system becomes more and more important only when you add your other colleagues to it, when you can work together on it. So the systems like that are becoming more common. The aspects of understanding what areas of the product that people use and how do you build stickiness and virality in your product is probably one of the best used secrets of product-led growth and product-led design. So there is, then I would also say like there's a couple of things, like in my own time at Messenger, when we were trying to grow to usage of Messenger to the number of users, we actually allowed them to share their bot experiences with other users. So there's a lot of ways in which they can post about it, talk about it in the Facebook newsfeed, and actually get the attention of other users. The other common method that's being used for virality or probably get the word out is allowing users to review in a common place. Like as you see, like in many places, there's review systems, and people like to actually comment and talk about it. And creating a system, creating a voice in which you are capturing that, at the same time sharing the good experiences to other people is part of building virality into the product. The other thing that I wanted to quickly touch about is how do you take the product and take it to your go-to-market teams, right? Like Usually there's a go-to-market teams, or like the marketing teams and the sales teams, which are actually sitting outside. You launch the product and you wait for them to go reach out, and you actually let them design the product message. You let them design the product, um, what is the positioning and everything, and then wait for that to happen. With product-led growth, the product managers, the growth product managers are actually responsible to go collaborate very in depth with the marketing teams or any of the outbound teams. It's the sales teams or the partnerships teams, to work very closely to understand and develop the specs on one side, but at the same time, work with them to decide what features that they're going to launch, and what are the feature packaging look like, how does the pricing look like, what is the pricing structure or layering look like. And those are like some of the key areas that you need to be thinking about as a growth product manager when you're launching your product. You're actually a part of the go-to-market team. And you actually work with them very closely to decide their KPIs and their goals and their metrics. So it's actually it's one of the key differentiator areas, like compared to a normal PM or a general PM to a growth focused PM. The other area that, as I said, like as one of the areas that I want to highlight and talk about is how companies are using the pricing and monetization as a lever for growth, is actually let the users have the value first before they price them. This comes in multiple different ways, in be it freemium or like free trial periods or free credit periods. There's a lot of combinations of this idea of letting the user have the value first or try before they actually can buy. Like for example, like Disney launched its service. It allowed for 3 months of free service, Disney Plus here in California. So where we can actually watch all the shows and everything, and then they start to charge us like a minimal fee of $3 or $4, and then they'll as they are also thinking about bundling up packages with people like Hulu. Like this, the same is now starting to be applied in companies on the SaaS side, SaaS B2B side, where they allow users to have a free trial period, where you can go in, sign up without any cost, not put your credit card in there, understand, build for your business, and then see whether the product suits or not. There is another indirect benefit of what we call it as product qualified leads. Many of the time when sales or like even inbound marketing is getting a lead, we don't know whether that particular lead is the exact target segment that you're looking for, or we call it product qualified leads, whether that is the segment that you're targeting this product for. Whereas in the case of like free trial and freemium products, you exactly know that because the user starts using it, and you know how they're using your product, how frequent they're using it, what value they're deriving out of it, and understanding whether that particular audience or that particular client falls under your target audience. So that's a really good way to look at how do you take your product in your go-to-market strategies and launch strategy as well. This is another area that companies like Facebook and Google use a lot, is identifying growth channels and making the product team work very closely with the partnership teams, which is like identifying platforms or partnerships and API integrate, and also like building a bunch of API integrations to build a deeper stickiness for the audience. I'll give you a good example, right? When I launched Messenger for businesses, initially we launched Messenger only in the Messenger surface. So we did have a certain amount of growth, but then we wanted to expand the growth and get more audience to come and use our product. So we launched something called the Messenger Live Chat plugin. What we did is we actually worked with a bunch of companies which actually determined, which actually built a ton of websites or had the handle for a lot of websites. For example, Shopify or GoDaddy. Like we actually worked with these companies where we worked and customized the live chat plugin and made the integration in a much deeper way, that we made these plugins available on a free or an easier way for their audience, right? Like for example, Shopify has around 1 million merchants who build their websites on Shopify. So we made the Messenger chat plugin available to them. And we all of a sudden grew from 0 to 1 million users because we made it available through a partner. Understanding key areas of platforms and partnerships is a key tenet of product growth. Like many of these platforms are now like they initially integrate and grow, like HubSpot, they integrated at Facebook or like other platforms, and they grew. And now they're at a point where they are themselves creating them as a big platform, and they're recognizing and building partner programs and agency programs. The whole set of companies do that. Like Yotpo is another good example. They have a big partner program now. It's actually, if you look at the details of it, like how they complement their service and how the agencies work on top of them, it's actually a fantastic model to grow fast without actually spending a ton of money in marketing. This is one of the, like I would say, untold secrets of the product-led growth movement. Finally, last but not the least, like as I said always, like the role of a growth product manager is about working very deeply with the outbound teams as much as they work with the inbound teams, but also understanding data and building up the right set of product analytics tool is at the foundation of a successful growth product manager. Like there's a lot of tools in the SaaS space. There's a lot of tools like Pendo or like Full Story and all that is being used, where you can track every aspect of the end user journey and see how much time that they're spending in your product, how long they're spending, what are the key features they're using, how many members in a particular client are using your product, or are they actually using it efficiently? Are they, and then at the same time, product growth managers also look at another key metric. There's a lot of engagement and retention metrics that they build their product tool, analytics tool, and focus on, but there are also another set of metrics, which is also very important, which I call them the satisfaction metrics. How are these users satisfied with your product, right? Like NPS is probably the most widely used satisfaction metric for B2B SaaS products. In case of consumer products, we have these 5-star or the CSAT score that we use for understanding user, or even the feedback system that we built inside the products. So the most important part of the growth product manager is to understand connecting the dot between the satisfaction metric and the retention and engagement metrics, and identifying what are the areas that they can improve on, how can they grow, what are the feedback that they can implement, how can they also run continuous product experiments, and also keep a tab on what are all the cohorts which join in a particular time or a particular type are performing, and how are they performing? Are they actually close to their target audience? Are they in the target audience, and how are they performing? Right? Understanding this and running these experiments is like is a day-to-day job of a growth product manager. Living and, as I said, I always call it like living and breathing data is probably the most important part of a growth product manager's job. And the other part of it is the leadership aspect, where you have to align these metrics, not only define them, create them, but also align them with your growth team. So you're all aligned, you're going with the same goal. And also like be aware of some of the pseudo metrics or some of the salient metrics that you don't want to be tied up with. So you want to understand the core of every metric and how you drive those metrics before you align with the cross-functional teams. Just want to give a bunch of quick key takeaways from the idea of product-led growth. First of all, product-led growth is a business strategy where the product usage itself becomes a primary driver for user acquisition. How do you build product design based on growth in your mind? So that's kind of like the principles behind it. It's as I said, like it's not only applied for consumer-facing startups. Consumer-facing startups have been doing this for a while. Now the same concepts have been taken and applied in the B2B enterprise world. And we should be thankful, because like all these crappy old systems that we go to enterprise and have to deal with it are now going to go away, because they're getting disrupted by the amazing user experience products like HubSpot and the likes of it. where they take a lot of care in how the end users perceive and use the product. And the growth PMs champion product-led growth principles. They are also the leaders who actually align the organizations on this growth-led trajectory. They work with the core PMs, or they also work with the head of PMs to develop roadmaps in which the key KPIs contain key growth metrics as well, and strategies and tactics. The other thing that I want to, as I mentioned, we talk about is like the importance of collaborating with the outbound teams, because aligning with the outbound teams is probably one of the most important things to do as a growth PM, because once you align your goal with them, then you can coordinate with how they think about growth and how you're thinking about changes in the product. How do you align them, and how do you actually guide them to a place where where all the teams are successful? So collaborating with the outbound teams is another key aspect of it. Last but not the least, the platform integrations and partnerships are a very strong growth lever that a lot of PLG companies are taking forth. I believe like a lot of your companies should also start thinking about in these lines, because these levers are very high growth levers. And again, one caution there is I wouldn't even go touch these levers unless you achieve certain amount of product market fit. So identifying, achieving product market fit, building great products, and then moving into these growth levers would be a great place to success. Thank you. Now I'll open the stage for Q&As, and yeah, how to do product-led growth for products in B2B space. It's really a question. As I said, like product-led growth has come from the consumer-facing companies, like the likes of Facebook or Airbnb, or even Uber and all that. And now all those principles are now being applied in the B2B space. For example, HubSpot is a really good example of a company which is investing a lot in their product over investing in general marketing and sales. Or even Slack is another good example where they built a fantastic product where the actual end user is going and promoting their product, not just the buyer of the product or the CIO of the company, but the actual end user is loving that experience, and they're going and promoting it to their internally inside the company and in the different organizations. And so the foundational principles are the same. Build products that end users love, not just the buyers, not just the people who influence the buying, but the actual end user. And then the other principles of building that virality, making the product and like have deeper integrations and solving the core need. So all these are like quintessential of building a product-led growth, building a product based on PLG principles. The other question you have is product market fit is similar to discovery and solution phase. It's somewhat similar, but the key difference is there are a certain amount of metrics, kind of like we call it like we send constant surveys. I would call it like it's the next phase of discovery and solution. Discovery and solution, we call it the MVP phase, where you understand what is the problem to be solved and how do you come out with the right solution and get that iteration. But product market fit is probably the next phase in which you actually know that the user is coming to your product regularly and using it, and understanding which features are really being used and which features are not being used, and also continuously iterating and experimenting whether if you remove the product today from the market, what will the users feel like? Are the users going to be like coming back to you and asking about it? Are they going to find another product? Are they actually, there are actually a famous survey on product market fit, which actually quantifies this. You can send the survey to your audience and see how they respond to it, and actually have a quantification saying whether your product achieved product market fit or not. It's one of those popular surveys that people use. The third one from Srivatsan is, as a product manager, how do we identify the customer needs and wants and identifying the right product for the right target audience? and fits the user needs. The foundational principle that we use, that I've always used, this is the core of product management, is what is the job, we call it the jobs to be done framework, which is like, what is the foundational job that the end user is trying to accomplish? That's the user need, right? Like, for example, if somebody is if somebody wants to have go from place A to place B, they could go buy a car, or they could rent a car, or they actually could order, or they could use a public transport, or they could like use an app like Uber, right? So understanding the core and foundational um, jobs to be done is a very quintessential part of identifying customer needs. You could also understand like what are all the areas in which that is table stakes, and what are all the areas that is delightful, or like users love to have, and what is the minimum thing that you need to be in that particular space, or like solving a particular problem. And then the other part of it is like, you actually start from the target audience. You actually take a particular audience, think about what are all the problems they face, and then we call it like persona, or understanding that, and then go into the jobs to be done, and then you come out with a product. How do I build virality and stickiness for B2B products? It's a really good question. A lot of the companies are already doing that. There's a lot of like companies have started giving referral bonuses. There's also like referral trial, extended trial period if you actually recommend someone. There's also included credits. For example, in my company GRIN, we're a marketing martech company. We allow a certain number of slots for we call it CRM slots, for the number of influencers a brand reaches out. We usually increase that number of, and we provide an additional capacity if the company actually refers us to another company or a co-company that that they know about, right? So identifying ways in which your product's exposure is beyond your existing customer, also like creating ways in which they could have a referral system in which other people, or like even your clients, can go and refer your product, is a good way to think about it. Another thing that's been coming up a lot, I've been talking about reviews a lot, is especially in the B2B space, there are places like G2 Crowd, and then there is tons of other places where people go and write reviews about your B2B SaaS products in a particular category, and encouraging your clients by giving them incentives to talk about your product, to go and write good referrals, or like actually if they feel good about it, go and express them, making it easy for them to go submit their reviews in G2 and things like that would be another way for your product to be known well. Sirisha, when do we start to use the virality kicker in the product? The product is not tested and still MVP phase. We kick in the virality, there are chances negative virality, also some virality on one-time log joining bonus where, yeah, absolutely. I think your product should definitely clear the MVP phase. You should not start virality and growth tactics when the product is not actually solving the basic needs of the user, or when it's not achieving the product market fit. The right time is to assess the product market fit, and at least like if it's not, then fine tune the product and see what problem you have to solve and focus on that and launch features on that. And once you achieve the product market fit, that's when you should be starting to focus on all the growth levers, including a lot of the virality component. Otherwise, it'll definitely lead into, there are many cases in which the core product itself is not in a place where it solves the foundational jobs to be done, and then you start losing money on it because you're incentivizing virality there. So it's very, very much important to understand whether your product has reached a certain product market fit and has a healthy number of users for them to give you feedback before you fully throttle up and increase all your growth levers. What's the stage or aspect where a product manager typically struggle or get stuck? I think one of the areas that I've seen is multiple areas, right? This is a broad question. One of the areas that I've seen like product managers get stuck a lot is actually in defining the right metrics and building the analytics tool accordingly. Right? There is like companies like Facebook and Uber have done a good job. They've been there over time. They've they have done a really good job in taking all the information that they get from customer support, sales, and everything, and integrating into one place where the product managers can analyze that. But there are not many other companies that where all the data and infrastructure is not in place, and making a decision without understanding that, without building that foundation, is a place a lot of product managers typically struggle. And I would focus my time on building that infrastructure soon, so we have visibility on how the customers are using a product, thinking about the right metrics and KPIs. How to apply this product led growth in pharmaceutical industry. If I want to do understand it's I think the foundational principles are, as I said, can be applied in multiple places. I believe when you're asking pharmaceutical industry, you mean like the tech side of it, I suppose. Understanding what consumers love, how do you build referrals and bonuses, how do you build virality, how do you build stickiness. I'm not used to the pharmaceutical industry as much, but I could kind of envision a lot of these foundational principles, thinking about growth over monetization, thinking about usage of product and adoption. I believe you have your own growth channels in pharmaceutical industry, and how do you integrate into your growth channel and making it accessible across the platforms that are available. Those are all foundational principles you can still apply in the pharmaceutical industry. Sorry, that's my knowledge about the pharma industry. It will be really good if you have a very specific product, I would be happy to talk about. How different is growth product managers versus growth mindset that MS advocates? So the growth mindset is, growth product managers is a product manager who's focused on growth. Growth mindset is something that I believe everyone should have. Growth mindset is something like there is like static mindset and growth mindset. It's like saying when you actually, people with static mindset feel that they are at a certain level of, that they feel that they cannot grow in their own thinking, or when they fail, they just wound up, and then they just don't actually learn from the mistakes and then keep going at it. Whereas like growth mindset people, it's all about, not about the end goal, it's about the process. What are they learning? If they fail, they learn from it and grow. So this one is the mindset of the people, and I believe growth mindset should be there with everyone. Growth product managers are a type of product managers who focus on growth. Omkar has this question: what are the key characteristics of market or product that makes product-led growth possible and appropriate than sales-led growth? Really good question. There are a couple of things, right? At the top of it, nobody wants to keep spending a lot of money, right? Like the amount of money that you would spend as an investment in, let's say, in a company like Slack compared to a company like earlier days, like IBM, Lotus Notes or something, is completely different. You want to have the minimal number of investment compared to the amount of growth you want to have, right? Instead of putting all your money in, foundationally, that's the principle in which, in a sales-focused organization, your growth is correlated to the amount of money you're spending, and on the sales teams and the other aspects of it. On the product-led growth, it's not. I wouldn't call it like correlated as much, right? You have to spend that initial investment to get the product teams aligned, to get things going. But once you set that up, it is a tree that can grow out of that base foundation that you've built, right? Fundamentally, the amount of investment that you need on a product-led growth companies is much lesser compared to a sales-led org. The other thing to think about it is how the environment have changed. A lot of people are, as I said, like consumers are demanding, the end users are demanding more and more, and you have an amazing sales-led organization with a not so good product. The end user is still going to be cribbing and like just be forced to use it, and there's going to be a product-led company that's going to come and take them out. Like I'll give you a really good example is like how HubSpot grew. Besides, there are a lot of martech companies out there which were actually dictating to the users of how to use things. HubSpot came in, they said like, we want to listen to the user, build products that users love. And then the word of mouth spread a lot and then made their product grow. And obviously like having an amazing product um, helped them take over a lot of these companies that were focused on sales only. Do we have any examples of large industrial corporations using product-led growth for building, delivering, growing physical products? Product-led growth for building, delivering, growing physical products. So I would say like the whole D2C world. I mean, like it's completely based on the product-led principles. I don't know like how much it is getting popular in India. Like the direct-to-consumer brands, a lot of them are selling physical products which are completely based on product-led principles. I'll give you a good example. Dollar Shave Club. They were bought by Walmart. They thought everything about the end user. They actually built their whole website, the experience of purchasing it, the packaging and everything was customized. Their whole product was the core focus. And then they let the word of mouth. They used viral tactics like influencers and other ways to get their product out. They didn't spend as much on the marketing, but they spent a lot of their time on their core and essential product, and that spoke for itself. A lot of the growing direct-to-consumer products have the same foundational principles as product-led growth. While you have shared a recipe on becoming a leader who works on product-led growth, what are those enablers for one to become ready? I think becoming a good product manager, there's a couple of things. I would say like there are three aspects to develop yourselves into a good product manager, even a product a growth manager, is to start building a strong product instinct. Look at different products, analyze how these products are being built, how are they thinking about growth, what are the key features, why a product becomes successful, why a particular product has failed. Understanding all this, doing your research, learning about it, reaching out and building that product instinct is very core, part of the core principle. I learned it with Google Ventures, like when it's part of Wungle, like 7-8 years ago, and then was super helpful during my time at Facebook. And building that product instinct is the first step. Then broadly understanding product, people are also really good communicators. They're also good leaders broadly who can collaborate well with different cross-functional teams. And working and building that ability to be a leader and take, and drive people towards the vision that you want and the roadmap that you're trying to execute is a very important quality that you can build. And finally, it's all about execution, right? Like how, and no matter where you are in your organization, you're not in the product team yet, but how are you executing the task that is given to you? And how well are you putting your efforts and energy into it? And those are the three tenets I consider as a good to have when you're developing yourselves into this role. This margin is very low for service-oriented businesses. This is from Saumik Datta. Margin is very low for service-oriented businesses. Most of the organization is now shifting from service-based model to product as a service. How services would be designed as a product and delivered to a customer. I think there are multiple things here, right? There is, when you say service-oriented businesses, there are multiple types of service-oriented businesses. Like, I would say like a hybrid model is broadly developing. Although like, for example, you can call Uber as a service-oriented business, but it can also be a product-oriented company. So it's I would say like the right way to think about it is not just like the broader terms like service-oriented model or business or like product-oriented model. It's about how are you delivering value to the end user? What is the core job that you're trying to accomplish? And are you doing it in the most effective way and the most delightful way? So that's the core tenet to focus on rather than the whether it's a service-based or a product-based model. That's how I think about it. Yeah, there are multiple tools that so this is from Saili Kulkarni. Could you please repeat the recommended tools you mentioned to track usage, such as Pendo, etc.? There are many tools that people use in the case of product analytics. There is definitely Pendo I've used. There's broadly Google Analytics a lot of people use. There is user voice. There is Full Story. I love Full Story. Full Story is one of those products I would never part with. Although Pendo is great, like with all the aggregation of analytics, Full Story is amazing. It's one of those tools where you actually can see how the user has navigated the page, and it records multiple things. It does some amount of aggregated analytics, but the level of clarity that you get by watching some of the how the users have navigated your web page or app gives you a much higher level of clarity. Definitely check out Full Story. Any other product? There is another company which is similar to Pendo, which is probably in the same league. I keep forgetting. I can message you guys later. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can respond back on that. One second. Okay, we got 6 minutes to go. What is the session time? Sorry, Smith. Yeah.
Anand, maybe we can take one more question. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. We'll do one more question.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Saura Deep Day. Yeah, do you see the B2B space in India as a great opportunity for innovative software products? I definitely see broadly B2B space as an amazing opportunity to build. But I'm not sure when you say like in India, like when you say like the market as India, or like when you think about building companies like HubSpot in India, I will definitely I'm more on the second thought, which is like India should have the amount of talent it has, building with all this framework and the principles and identifying the core problems, can build amazingly great B2B SaaS products. I think there are already companies like Freshdesk. I'm hearing Pipe Candy, like a lot of these companies are coming out in the B2B space from India. And I only think, given that it's actually very well formulated, a lot more companies can come out of such a place like India. Yeah, I think, is it an...
Okay, I'm sorry to disappoint the rest of the people who asked the questions. Anand lives in the US, and we cannot, hold him to our desk for too long a time. Thank you for understanding, and thank you, Anand, for your wonderful session and patiently responding to every question. And to the attendees, thank you so much. We will see you again on the next webinar.